What's going on, everyone? I'm just a typical, average American here today to react and learn about why Starmer is unpopular. So, like most Americans, I don't really know much about British news and British politics. So, today, I really want to take a look at this video by TLDR News and learn about how the people of the UK really feel about your Prime Minister and how your government is doing so far. So, let's take a look.
Starmer is not a popular guy at the moment. 5 months into his term, the UK Prime Minister's approval ratings have plummeted. And he's even had to reset some of his key targets.
Really? Plummeted? I mean, this is this is strong language. It's not like, oh, some people are unhappy with Starmer. It's like approval ratings have plummeted? Yeah, to be completely honest, like I said, this is just not really stuff that we hear about here in America. So this is kind of the first time I'm hearing about this. What exactly is happening in the UK that people are so upset about?
To make matters worse, last Thursday, a bombshell voting intention tracker was published by the polling company Find Out Now, showing that Reform UK had overtaken Labour for the first time ever.
Okay, Reform UK? Is that a political party? Because I know the Labour Party is a political party in the UK. This kind of, confuses me a little bit because in the United States, we call our political parties maybe slightly different things. So, Reform UK, is that a party?
These results showed that 26% of people surveyed said they'd vote Conservative if an election were held tomorrow.
Wow.
24% said they'd vote Reform UK, and 23% said they'd vote Labour. So in this video, we're going to take a look at what's happened since the 2024 general election, why UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer is so unpopular, and what this means going forward.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it wasn't that long ago when I was doing a video about how the UK has a new Prime Minister, Starmer. I was just like, I feel like that wasn't that long ago. Some time has passed, but now I'm seeing a video that's why is Starmer so unpopular? Man, that's really unfortunate, but I want to learn more about this.
Be notified when we release new videos. First, though, let's start by recapping the 2024 general election and what's happened since.
Yes.
Essentially, despite one of their largest victories since Margaret Thatcher, the Conservatives really struggled in government after 2019. Prime Minister Boris Johnson presided over a number of scandals, most notably Partygate, and their standing in the polls began to take a hit. Meanwhile, Labour, who had just...
Partygate. Like I keep saying, we really don't hear about UK news in America. And even I heard about this Partygate fiasco thing.
Elected the former shadow Brexit Secretary Keir Starmer as their leader, were enjoying something of a resurgence. After Johnson's downfall, both of these trends continued further. Truss damaged the Tories' credibility on the economy and worsened factionalism. And Starmer continued to reform Labour, dragging it to the centre. By the time of the 2024 election, the Tories were around 20 points behind Labour in the polls. And, come election day itself, Labour secured themselves the second largest majority in their history. Things since the election, though, have been far from rosy. Starmer has been embroiled in a number of different scandals, seriously damaging his credibility and his favourability among the electorate.
Scandals? This is what I come for, the scandals. No, but seriously, what is this?
In mid-November, according to data from YouGov, Starmer's net approval rating fell to the lowest of the major party leaders, sitting at -33.
Wow, people are really not happy. I assume we're going to get to why soon.
This new poll makes things look even worse for Starmer. Conducted by Find Out Now in a survey of 2,607 adults, 26% said they'd vote for the Conservatives, 24% for Reform, and 23% for Labour. This marks a 2-point increase.
So, two other parties have now moved above the Labour Party if an election was held right now.
Increase for Reform compared to the week before, a 1-point drop for the Conservatives and a 2-point drop for Labour.
Wow.
However, we should point out that the methodology used by this company differs from that of other pollsters, which explains why the support for Labour is lower in this one compared to others. The Find Out Now survey first asks people if they would vote, and if not, excludes them.
Yeah, I mean, you have to be careful. Like, there are lots of different polls and different methodologies for conducting polls. And here in America, you know, for the presidential election we just had, it turned out so many of the polls in America about who would win our election were like really, really not accurate. So you got to take it all with a little grain of salt.
This results in a lower Labour projection because of 3 factors. Labour voters are less likely to say they'll vote. Labour voters are less likely to stick with their party. And Labour voters are more likely to say they don't know how they would vote. Anyway, this brings us on to the main part of our video. Why is Starmer so unpopular? We've got broadly 3 main ideas here, but if you've got any more, we'd love to hear about them in the comments. First up is Starmer's struggles on the economy. We recently made a full video on this, which you should watch if you want more detail. But to recap briefly, the latest ONS data covering July to September this year shows that GDP rose by just 0.1% and actually contracted in the month of September. This was well down from the 0.7% growth we saw in the first quarter of 2024 and the 0.5% we saw in the second quarter.
So, since Starmer has taken the position of Prime Minister, there has been economic growth by the look of it. It just started out very strong and has now tapered off down and down as time has gone on, and so people are getting more and more unhappy about that. And I know there's a huge variety of factors that control, like, your country's economy. Some things that the government can control and some things that they can't, but it does always feel like, and this is true in America, that if the economy is doing poorly, I'm speaking for Americans right now, most people will blame the government. Like, whether there are certain things they can do, certain things out of their control, but most Americans, if the economy is doing bad, will just blame the government. And so it seems like that's kind of similar in the UK.
Moreover, GDP per capita today remains at 0.7% below its pre-pandemic level, with the only other G7 economies in this position being Germany and Canada, where GDP per capita is still about 2% below pre-pandemic levels. This has been particularly bad for Starmer, given that probably Labour's most recognisable campaign pledge was growth.
That'll do it. That'll do it. Now it's starting to make sense. Like I said, you can't just put the entire blame on, like, the prime minister and the government. You can put some of the blame. There's some things in their control, policies and whatnot. But when one of the things that you run your campaign on is, there's going to be great economic growth if I'm in charge, and then it doesn't come to fruition, people are going to be upset, and rightfully so, if that's what you promise.
Lower than expected GDP growth means lower than expected tax revenues, which means more emergency borrowing, which means higher levels of public debt. This has actually already begun to happen. In August, according to ONS data, the government had to borrow £13.7 billion, about £2.5 billion more than forecast, taking the UK's overall public debt to GDP ratio to over 100% for the first time since the 1960s.
This is causing not just the people of the UK to struggle, but the government has to go into more and more debt. Nobody is happy. I see.
Second is Starmer's struggles politically, i.e. his communications both as Prime Minister and within his own administration. Okay. Starmer's messaging about various policy initiatives has seemed confused at times.
Really?
It seems that whenever the Prime Minister gets frustrated about his lack of movement in the polls, he just calls a press conference and tries to explain to the electorate exactly what his priorities for government are.
Huh. Well, at least your Prime Minister, at least your leader actually does press conferences and attempts to talk about the issues, or even if it comes across as they say, as defensive and explaining away things, but at least there's some kind of communication. That's really been a sore spot here in America, for sure. Good communication from our leaders. But anyway, this is really interesting to me. Again, this is really not something that comes across here in America. I think you really have to be in the UK to understand and experience a lot of this stuff. So this is good. This is very good that it's being explained to me.
The issue is, he's just done this too many times, to the point that his aims and objectives have been obscured. We've included this flowchart from journalist Max Kendicks to show you just how unclear this is. Right now, Starmer has 3 foundations, 5 missions, 6 first steps, 6 milestones, 7 pillars, and 8 growth sectors.
Oh my.
On its own, this might not be too much of an issue. However, Starmer has also...
Yeah, I was going to say, at least there's a flow chart, there's some kind of plan. I mean, at least it's there, I guess, if not a bit convoluted.
Also struggled to convey a positive message since he became Prime Minister. When he spent months warning the electorate that the budget would be painful, this just ended up creating a sense that things weren't going well under Labour. In a sense, this is the opposite to Prime Ministers like Boris Johnson, or even, to an extent, Tony Blair, who tried to project a sense of British optimism.
Oh, okay.
This brings us to our final...
Right, at a certain point, even if things are going badly, it doesn't help if it's good to be honest. That is a good thing, but it might also, in politics, be kind of your downfall, being too... That sounds horrible. But your messaging and portraying, okay, things are going bad, you can still portray some kind of optimism or positivity in that message, and I don't know, maybe he hasn't done as good a job as he could with that. What's the third thing? Why Keir Starmer is unpopular?
Final point, which is Starmer's general perception by the UK public.
Sure.
We recently did a podcast on this, which you might want to check out. But essentially, Starmer just doesn't have good vibes.
Oh my God, that's so funny to me because it's so true. At a certain point, it doesn't matter what the stats are, it doesn't matter what the policies are, even the facts. At a certain point, people vote on vibes. They vote on whether they like you. It's literally that simple. Whether they like you. Yeah, and that's definitely how it works a lot in America. And, people are just people. It works that way in the UK and everywhere in the world with politicians. You have to be likable.
In September, a survey by Savanta asked 2,000 people to give one word to describe Keir Starmer, with the outstanding choice being liar, followed much more positively by good and strong, but then by useless, idiot, weak, and boring.
Oh my God!
It's this last adjective that opposition figures have often tried to capitalise on. And in summer 2022, Starmer reportedly even asked his then shadow cabinet to stop briefing the press that he's boring, in a meeting described by one Labour frontbencher as, ironically, very boring.
Boring? Liar. Boring. I don't just want to sit here and bash Starmer. I'm just going off what's, in this little news video. I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who like Starmer, or a lot of people apparently, a big amount of people who are unhappy with Starmer and think he's boring. Boring. What an interesting word to use. Boring.
Now, that might sound like a relatively minor thing, After all, prime ministers are primarily responsible for managing their cabinet and party, which Starmer seems to be coping with fairly well. However, it obviously does matter when elections come around, and Labour will be wary of losing more voters to parties like Reform. While some of the issues we've seen so far, like the freebie scandal...
Man, by the way, that is so cool that there's... I see at least 3 political parties up here that are neck and neck, very close. 3 political parties and many more under that. I just gotta say, you guys are so lucky that you have more than 2 political parties and ideologies. And anyway, that just kind of jumped out to me from my American point of view. I'm like, wow, that's really cool. Anyway.
And mixed messaging could conceivably be forgiven as teething problems. Labour will have to prove to the UK public that they have delivered economic growth, which is likely to remain Starmer's biggest challenge. Finally, with Trump...
Yeah, the whole world is kind of experiencing economic struggles. Like, I feel like every country in the world was having difficulties with inflation and costs of living, and just every country was having this problem, and we're just kind of starting to come out of that. Well, maybe not in the UK, because apparently people are upset about it.
Trump in office in the US and a much more fractured European Parliament, Starmer's leadership, not just within the UK, but also the world stage, will be something to watch closely.
Right.
As you've probably noticed, the news cycle is particularly fast right now, with coups, elections, and governmental gossip happening all over the world. In fact, with Trump heading into the White House, that chaos is only likely to get worse.
Yeah.
If you're feeling a little lost and even a little depressed, then you might want to...
Oh, this is just for their channel. Again, this was by TLDR News. Want to shout them out. Very, very good. Awesome that there's a YouTube British news channel that explains these types of things in a way that I can understand. I don't know. Like, I don't know if there's any twist or bias to their coverage. From what I can tell, it's pretty neutral. But I don't know. I just thought this was a great little video to inform me as an American about what is happening in the UK, what the people of the UK think about your government and your leader and the direction the UK is going, because like I keep saying, in America, we don't hear nearly enough about this kind of stuff. We just are overloaded with American news and American politics. So I think it's so fantastic to keep up to date on what's happening now, currently, in the UK. So I quite enjoyed this. Anyway, if you enjoyed this as well, feel free to give this video a like or leave a comment with your thoughts. If you're in the UK, this affects you. What do you think about Starmer and your government and your economics and all the stuff talked about here today? That'd be awesome to hear about from actual British people. And if you're interested in more videos like this, me reacting to the UK and learning about UK culture, feel free to subscribe for more. And until then, thanks for watching, and see you next time.